I've already said hello to you, but hello to you. I'm sorry I'm eating while we teach. Okay. So, what did we talk about last week? Somebody tell me.
Oh, the flood.
What?
The flood.
Oh, yes, the flood. Sorry, I heard blood, and I was like, Yes, the flood, JC.
Wait, what about paper for taking notes?
The front and back one.
That's one note.
Kirsten.
Genesis.
Yeah. So we started in Genesis. We talked about creation, the fall, and the flood. So today, we're going to talk about a lot of people still in Genesis. At least my people are in Genesis. All right. So if I signed you up to read, go ahead and open to find your Genesis. Except for Brooklyn, yours is on the paper. So you don't have to worry about it. And Sean, we're going to start reading Genesis 12, 1 to 4. I'm going to let y'all find that for a minute.
On page 62.
And we're gonna answer a lot of similar questions tonight. Yes, Emma.
Does everybody have to open to that, or just...
If you feel like you concentrate better by following along, go ahead. But if you're okay just listening while they read, that's fine too. Okay. All right. Hold on. JC, did you find yours?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody good?
I read the whole chapter.
I know. All right. Go ahead, Sean.
Now the Lord said to Abraham, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed."
Beautiful. Thank you, Sean. All right. So in what we just read, what is God promising?
That if somebody blesses you, they will be blessed, and if somebody curses you, that you will be cursed.
Yeah. And God is promising blessings to Abram. And he's also, I don't know if y'all caught it, but he says he's going to make of him a great nation. And so he's promising him lots of offspring to make a great nation. But Abram and Sarai, at this point, do not have any children. So we're going to keep reading about that. So in what Sean just read, what does God ask Abraham and family to do? What is he asking them to do?
He's asking them to leave their town and their home and all that.
Yeah, he's asking them to just get up and leave. And so what do? Yep, they leave. Beautiful. All right. Dawson, you're next.
5.
Make sure you listen so that we can answer these questions together.
5 through 20.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Abraham took his wife Sarah and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons who they
Possessions.
that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran, and they set forth to go to the land of Canaan.
Pause. Do y'all remember when we talked about Canaan last week? It was one of Ham's sons, and he was cursed, right? All right, keep going, Dawson.
When they had come to the land of Canaan, Abraham passed through the land to the place where
Shechem.
to the oak of Moreh.
Mhm.
At the time the
Canaanites.
Canaanites were in the land, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country of east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abraham journeyed on by stages towards the Negev.
Good job. If ever y'all have to read in church and there's something like that, just power through it. And if you say it with confidence, people will think that you're right.
Great story.
Yeah. There's some stuff in there that I don't know how to pronounce, but I just pretend like I know how. All right. So, and before we go on, I know, Dawson, you were reading Abraham, and we think of Abraham as Abraham, but at some point, and we'll read about that too, he and his wife had their names changed. So it's actually Abram and Sarai, which sounds weird, but it's okay. All right. So, from what Dawson just read, what is God promising there?
All of his offspring, some land.
Yeah. So again, God is promising Abram, sorry. What else?
Where are we writing this at?
On your front and back paper.
On here it says, flip to the back of the Bible.
We skipped that part.
I have a question.
Yes.
Back up to 1 through 4. Where did they live to?
So they were leaving and they were going to the land of Canaan. That's where they're on their way to. And that was in what Dawson just read. Okay. So God is promising, again, land and offspring to Abram and Sarai. Sorry, I lost my place. So what does Abraham do? Or no, what does God ask Abraham to do? Sorry. Maybe we should all read along when we read the next one. Dawson, what is God asking Abram to do?
God is asking Abram to go and build an altar.
Yes. And then what does Abraham do?
He builds an altar.
He builds an altar. Beautiful. So, they've gotten up, they've left where they are. In there it said they pitched their tents, but it's not like a tent like we think of as camping, like a camping tent. Their tents were what they lived in. So it was like all of their stuff, all of their belongings. They packed everything up and just took it with them. And, okay, now we're going to turn to the back. Page 2098. And it should be a map.
29:8.
So if you look in red, that's the route of Abraham and Sarah. So they started,
A long walk.
yeah, it is a long walk. It's 500 miles. Do any of y'all know what is 500 miles away from here?
A long way away. Isn't it like the Panhandle?
Yeah, Panhandle.
Because I remember going up in the Panhandle and it's 500 miles away.
Yeah, if you go east, the 500 miles is like Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Can you imagine picking up all of your whole house, and going to Baton Rouge right now.
No.
Oh my god.
I couldn't either.
I could.
Really?
My house is in RV.
Yeah, RV is like a modern day tent. All right. Beautiful. All right, everybody turn to Genesis 15.
Patricia, why is this piece of paper in my Bible?
I don't know.
Oh, I found that in the other Bible. I just stuck it in my hand.
So Genesis 15,
The Ten Commandments.
1 through 16.
Start reading?
Is everybody there?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, go ahead and start reading.
After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abraham said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house,
Mhm.
of my house is
Eliezer,
Eliezer of the
Damascus.
And Abraham said, You have given me no offspring and no slave born in my house. Is to be my heir. But the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir. No one but your very own issue shall be your heir. He brought him outside and said, Look toward heaven and count the stars. If you are able to count them, then, he said to him, so shall your descendants be. And he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. Then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you from your earth of the
Chaldeans.
Chaldeans to give you this land to possess.
There you go.
He said, O Lord God, how I am, I know that I shall possess it. He said to him, Bring me the heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. He brought him all these and cut them into, laying each half over against the other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when the birds of prey came down on the carcass, Abraham drove them away.
Pause. Okay, so he's killing animals and cutting them open. What is that?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Thank you. All right, keep going.
As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and a deep and terrifying darkness descended upon him. Then the Lord said to Abraham, Now this for certain, that your offspring shall be aliens in a land that is not theirs, and shall be slaves there, and they shall be oppressed for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for yourself, you shall go to your ancestors in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the
Iniquity.
of the Amorites is not yet complete.
Almost done. You got this.
Oh, it's not 1 through 16?
Oh no. You're right, sorry. Good job.
Oh.
Thank you. All right, so what is God promising here? An heir. What is an heir?
Like someone who inherits like something.
Yes, somebody who inherits
I'm
something.
confused on the notes. Are you still on the first page?
Yes.
Of the notes? Yes.
Which like
We just read Genesis 15, 1 through 16.
okay, so we're on like oh, okay.
Got it?
No. Wait, because it says all of his offspring, and then, yeah. So, I'm confused. I put the stuff on the wrong thing.
Hold on.
Get that too.
It's okay.
I just
So
like
that is not supposed to be there?
I just didn't write anything for the second one.
I just erased it.
He gave his offspring land.
That's fine. It's okay. I think my notes are different than yours. So just,
What is yours?
mine are more detailed.
So we don't have to write what you're saying?
Right, maybe on the back at the bottom, right for Genesis 15. So is Genesis 15 not on there?
It is, but you said to put, like, I guess we got confused because you said
With the
to
different-
write,
Yeah.
and it was a different part, and so we put it on Genesis 15.
Sorry, y'all.
I didn't write anything for the second one.
Okay. That's okay. Yes, JC.
With the name Sarah with an I, what is that?
Sarai. So that's her
Sarai.
name before they get changed. And we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
So they changed him to Abraham's?
Yeah. So eventually Abram becomes Abraham and Sarai becomes Sarah.
And he comes to be the 16th president of the United States.
Not quite. That's a different Abraham. All right. So anyway, with what we just read, and you can write these down or not, just find a space in your notes to write. So again, what is God promising? What did we say? An heir.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What else? Find where it talks about the stars. What is God promising?
That they will all become his offspring. Oh wait, never mind.
H-E-I-R.
Yeah, heir is H-E-I-R. So an heir is like a son or a daughter or a grandson.
How do you spell it again?
H-E-I-R. So God is promising Abram, that his offspring will be as many as the stars in the sky. That's a lot. And again, Abram and Sarai do not have any children, and they're starting to get up there in years. Okay? All right. So, what does God ask Abram to do?
To look into the stars.
Yes. What else? Kirsten.
He said to do something with animals for like 3 days.
Yeah, so he made a sacrifice with animals. Good. So what does Abram do?
Make a sacrifice.
Makes a sacrifice. Are y'all seeing a pattern here? All right. So, how is this covenant like and unlike the one that we read in Genesis 12, what Dawson read?
In this one, isn't he being a little bit more, like, kill stuff? When the other one, he was more like
This is like more
peaceful,
serious.
kind of.
Yeah, more serious. More detailed.
What was the question that you said?
What?
What was the question that you said?
How is this covenant, how is this promise like and unlike the one that we read about in Genesis 12? With what Dawson read earlier. Got it? Alright, we're going to take a break for a minute and watch a video.
Is your pizza cold?
Please tell me,
Wait, what was
This is a question.
Sorry for the confusing notes, y'all.
Keisha, can
Uh-huh.
you hand me a water, please?
Okay, the next part in your note says video, right?
Yeah.
What, Dawson?
Football practice ended a long time.
What?
Football practice ended a long time.
You're right. Okay.
This part you underneath just turn out this one. That one.
Keisha,
Yes.
maybe this part.
That one.
Yeah, we just talked about that. And we talked about how it's more detailed. Oh no!
Pause it.
What happened?
I don't know.
Click the internet or something.
Oh, hang on.
Well, it's not on the internet.
The internets.
Let me see.
Why don't you click X?
Maybe click on
Oh,
Chrome.
it's fine. What happened?
Maybe it just doesn't want to pull up.
Remember those videos we used to watch that were like the drawings of people?
The holy moly ones.
Why is it just
Abram, son of Terah, lived in the region of Haran with his beautiful wife, Sarai. Together, they led a rather unremarkable life. But that morning, God appeared to Abram and told him to leave his country, his people, his father's household, and go to a land to be revealed later. The Lord promised many blessings in return.
Okay.
Abram attempted to explain the relocation plan to Sarai. Since he had no concrete details on the purpose or value of the move, this proved rather difficult. Regardless, Abram and Sarai packed up all of their belongings and left for the land of Canaan. But upon arrival, they found the land engulfed in famine and the local climate less than ideal. And the bounty promised was nowhere to be seen. Fortunately, God returned to clarify a few things. The Lord explained that this land would be given to Abram's children. Childless and well past their prime, Abram and Sarai wondered what they would do until the increasingly unlikely event of offspring occurred. Because of the famine, they decided to follow their stomachs and set out for Egypt.
Okay.
Just outside of Egypt, a grim thought suddenly occurred to Abram. Abram found Sarai to be alarmingly beautiful. Might not the men of Egypt see this foreign temptress and immediately be filled with desire? And might that desire be so intense that they would murder her husband? He knew God was supposed to be with him, but he couldn't take any chances. So Abram introduced Sarai as his sister. Pharaoh fell for their ruse, proving even too effective.
Abram, may I have your blessing to take your beautiful sister as my wife?
Oh. Okay.
Sarai was rather annoyed by this development, noting that so far, neither Abram's faith or lack thereof had created much for desirable circumstances. There were numerous perks to being the Pharaoh's brother-in-law. He received sheep, camels, servants. However, the rest of Pharaoh's household did not fare as well under the deceitful arrangement. The Lord engulfed the line of Pharaoh in pestilence and disease. Knowing that she was to blame, Sarai,
Abram's my husband!
eventually told the truth. Pharaoh was none too pleased. For years, Sarai and Abram had attempted to conceive, but to no avail. Without children, Abram could not receive the Lord's bounty. Sarai suggested Abram bed with her handmaiden, Hagar, to expedite the process.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
This was not also
Okay.
not in your children's Bible.
Okay. Okay.
The plan was a success. Abram was given his first son, Ishmael.
Wow.
Though it was her idea, Sarai was immediately jealous. Shortly after this, God clarified to Abram some key elements of the covenant. First of all, their names would change. Abram to Abraham, and Sarai to Sarah.
Okay.
Second, Abraham must circumcise himself, the men of his household, and all of his male descendants.
Okay.
This was the first time the word circumcision had been used, let alone the act. So naturally, God had to provide Abraham with a short tutorial. As with every new surgical method, the first few procedures were touch and go.
Okay.
In turn, God promised to fulfill God's part of the covenant, stating that Sarah would have a son.
Okay.
In 1 year's time, God's promise was fulfilled. The now profoundly old couple named their son Isaac. It was a joyous occasion. However, Isaac's birth created new complications. Sarah told Abraham to get rid of Hagar and her son Ishmael, for he would not share in Isaac's inheritance. Abraham attempted to save the situation, but Sarah was adamant.
Okay.
Abraham tried to explain the situation to Hagar and Ishmael. The Lord assured Abraham that Ishmael would be provided for, that the son of his maidservant would become a nation as well. But the Lord's reassurance did little to lighten Abraham's heart. When Isaac was 12, the Lord instructed Abraham to take his beloved son to the region of Moriah and sacrifice him as a burnt offering.
Okay.
Golly, are we going camping, Dad?
Sure.
Yep.
Oh, I get it. You're building an altar for sacrifice. But Dad, where's the lamb for the burnt offering?
Between his bewildering sobs, Abraham explained to Isaac that God would provide a lamb for sacrifice.
Oh, wow, Dad. That looks pretty sharp.
At the last possible moment, the Lord intervened and told Abraham not to lay a hand upon the boy.
Okay. Woo! Okay.
Abraham confirmed his faith. He had withheld nothing from the Lord, not even his beloved son.
Gee willikers, Dad, a ram! Can we sacrifice it?
Okay.
And as the Lord promised, the descendants of Abraham spread throughout the land, numbering greater than the stars, and all nations were blessed through his offspring.
Okay. So, as we were reading earlier, it kept saying, like, or when we were answering questions, God told Abraham to do something, and Abraham did it. He said, okay. So, Abram and Sarai did not have any children yet, and so they decided to take things into their own hands. And Abram slept with his wife's maid, they called it a maid servant, and had a son. That's not what God asked them to do. So that relationship was very, very imperfect and very, very crazy. What do you think that relationship would have been like?
Nowadays?
Crazy. What did you say, Jay-Z?
Nowadays? Or
Sure.
what do you mean, like,
We'll leave it at crazy. I think we can all make assumptions there. But even though they decided to take things into their own hands and have a son not the way that God was planning on, they were imperfect, but God still used them for his plan in the scheme of things. And I kind of love that story because I think all of us I know all of us are imperfect, but God can use us anyway. I hope none of us are imperfect in those ways, but anyway, okay. So on your paper, there's like do you see the little picture with words? Brooklyn, I want you to read that. So this is from our hymnal, which we have over in the sanctuary. We don't usually use them in praise and worship, but we'll use different bits and pieces from them. Whenever somebody is baptized, and eventually when y'all get confirmed, these promises are made. And so, Brooklyn, I want you to read those, please.
Okay. You have made public perfections of your faith. Do you intend to continue in the covenant of God made with you in the Holy Baptist? To live among God's faithful people, to hear the word of God and share it in the Lord's Supper, to proclaim the good news of God and Christian and Christ through word and deed, to serve all people, following the example of Jesus, and to strive for justice and peace in all the earth.
Good, you can stop there. Perfect. So, what?
Oh, I'll just read a little.
So with those 5 things that Brooklyn just read, what most explains what was just going on with Abram and Sarah and Hagar?
Who was Hagar?
She was the maid servant who had Ishmael.
Weird name.
Ishmael.
My mom's name is Ishmael.
So which of those 5 promises makes the most sense here? Take a guess. Oh, what? Oh, to live among God's faithful people. You're so right. So, even though...
Oh, just right now.
Yes.
Live among God's faithful people.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dawson.
I know.
So even though their relationships were really crazy, Abraham was still faithful to God. He said yes when God asked him to do things. So we're going to backtrack a little bit and read more from the Bible. Genesis 17, 1 through 27. And that, JC, that's your big
Should I start now?
chapter.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead and everybody turn to Genesis 17. If you're
Page
not there.
67. Can I like stop and ask someone else to read?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot of words.
That's a lot of work. Oh my gosh. How much Vodavada is that?
That's the whole 17.
Yeah. JC, whenever you're tired of reading, I'll have Calvin read.
Got it. Okay. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty. Walk before me and be blameless, and I will make you my covenant between me and you, and will make you exceedingly numerous. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, As for me, this is my covenant with you. You shall be the ancestor of a multitude of nations. No longer shall you be named Abram, but you shall be named Abraham.
Yeah.
For I have made you the ancestor of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make nations of you, and kings shall come from you. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and your offspring after you throughout their generation, for an everlasting covenant to be God to you and for your offspring after you. I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land where you are now living in, all the land of Canaan, for a perpetual holding, and I will be their God. God said to Abraham, As for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offspring after you throughout their generation. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised of the covenant between me and you throughout your You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. Throughout your generations, every male among you shall be circumcised when he is 8 days old. Money from any foreigner who is not
Including. I think you skipped a line there.
Oh yeah. Including the slave born in your house and the one bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. Both the slave born in your house and the one bought with your money must be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant. Any circumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin shall be cut from his people. He has broken my covenant. Okay, Calvin, please.
God said to Abraham, As for
Sarai.
your wife, you shall not call her
Sarai.
but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall give rise to nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said to himself, Can a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Can Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, Oh, that
Ishmael.
might live to see your sight. God said, No, but your wife Sarah shall bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for
Ishmael,
I have heard you. I will bless him and have him fruitful and
exceedingly.
numerous. He shall be the father of 12 princes, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this season next year. And when he had finished talking to him, God went up from Abraham.
Pause. All right. So Abraham is 100. Sarah is 90. I want you to think of a 90-year-old that you know, or somebody kind of old. Can you imagine them having a baby?
No.
No. That's what they thought too. They were like, God, ha ha ha, you're funny. But God still promised, and I think that's one of those things where, if you've ever heard like with God all things are possible, I think that's one of those things. All right, Calvin, do you want to keep reading, or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay.
Not much left.
Okay.
Then Abraham took his son
Ishmael
and all the slaves born in his house were bought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and he circumcised the flesh of their foreskins that very day, as God had said to him. Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and his son
Ishmael
was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. That very day Abraham and his son
Ishmael
were circumcised, and all the men of his house, slaves born in the house, and those brought with money from a foreigner, were circumcised with it.
Beautiful. Sorry, I know that was long. Thank you, JC and Calvin, for reading. So, what is God promising there in that large chunk that we just read? It is a lot. You can look it back over if you want to.
What are we looking for?
What is God promising?
That's something happening.
Brooklyn.
For them to have a baby.
Yeah, for them to have a baby. And again, for them to be like the father and mother of all nations. Is there anything else that God is promising? So, Ishmael is the son of Hagar, who was the maidservant of Sarah. And even though he wasn't going to be like, he wasn't going to receive like the main blessing like Isaac was, that is Abraham and Sarah's son, he was still promising to make a great nation from him too. And so so Judaism and Christianity and Islam are all part of an Abrahamic religion. So they all come from Abraham. And Ishmael is the father of Islam. And Isaac or Abraham? Christianity? Isaac.
Well, Isaac, it goes through.
Yeah. So they're great nations. So what does God ask Abraham to do?
Have a kid when he's 100 years old.
Yeah, have a kid when he's 100. Brooklyn.
To sacrifice his kid?
That hasn't come yet.
Oh, well,
We're not there yet, but he does eventually.
To move and start his own kingdom or something like that.
Not quite. So he's asking Abraham to be circumcised. Dude. This is my least favorite part to talk about.
This is your class.
I know. So, I know.
Is that bad?
Boys, do you know what circumcision is?
No.
No.
Okay.
Oh,
I have a
Lord.
feeling I do.
I think I've heard it. No,
Okay.
Probably haven't.
So when boys are born,
Oh,
their
I've heard
parents
this.
either decide to circumcise them or to not circumcise them.
I know what this is.
So they either cut off.
Oh, okay.
You can stop.
Not yeah. Okay, I hope you not the whole thing,
It's a
just
piece
just
of
part of
skin.
it.
A piece of
Yes,
skin.
the piece of skin. Yes. So God is asking him to do this, and apparently, when you're older, it hurts a lot more, and you bleed a lot more. And like in the video, when he made the chopping noises, that was bad. That hurt my insides.
Oh, that's just bad.
Yes.
Yeah.
So God is asking him to do that, and God is also giving him a new name. So with this new covenant, this promise to have a child and be the father of all nations, God is like giving them a new name, giving them new things, and they're, yeah, does that make sense? All right. And what does Abraham do? Get circumcised. He does it. All right. We're going to skip that other question, and I'm running low on time. But
You still got 40 minutes.
I know, but I'm not the only one teaching today.
Oh.
Let's, real quick, we're going to skip over Genesis 18, but I want to go, sorry, Austin.
Oh, can Austin take mine?
No, Jake can have that.
Let's, everybody open in Genesis 21 really quick.
I thought you said we weren't gonna, or that we shouldn't read past like Genesis like 18 or something last week.
Yeah, because it had too much of.
Oh. Well, I mean, what did we just read about today? Or what did we watch about today?
That was
That.
nasty.
I kind of
Yeah.
forgot.
But you know what? It's human stuff, and people go through it, and the people in the Bible weren't immune to any of that. They were real people facing real things. Yeah. So, okay. Genesis 21. 1 through 7.
The Lord dealt with Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had promised. Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to his son, whom Sarah bore to him. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded to him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Now Sarah said, God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. And she said, who would ever have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age.
Good. Thank you. So what did God do?
He gave Isaac.
Yes, Isaac was born, and Isaac means laughter, and he was named that because when God told Abraham and Sarah that they were going to have a child, they laughed. What did Abraham and Sarah do?
Have a child.
They had a child.
Wait, how do you?
Had Isaac circumcised.
Yeah, so he was part of that new covenant.
I saw. I'm confused.
Isaac?
Yeah.
Isaac.
I got it.
Isaac.
Yes. Did Abraham and Sarah deserve such favor from God?
Yes.
Yes,
Why?
Because they
because they
everything
did
else.
everything he told them to do.
He did everything they told him to do. But did they also mess up?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're
But
humans.
everybody sins.
Everybody sins, yeah.
Wait, so what's the answer?
The answer is, well, did they deserve such favor from God? You can put yes or no. I don't think they did.
That's it. No,
Why?
Because they were human and they messed up.
So,
But-
yes.
Everybody messes
That's the amazing thing about God is that
He doesn't care about that.
even though they messed up, He gave them favor. So we're going to stop there.
We move from Abraham and Sarah now and Isaac to Isaac's children. The blessing that God gave to Abraham and Sarah was passed down to Isaac. Isaac married a woman by the name of Rebekah. Now, Rebekah ended up pregnant, and her pregnancy was a very, very difficult pregnancy. It felt like there was this war going on within her womb. And she cried out to God and said, "What's going on? This is horrible. I'd rather die than go through what I'm going through right now." And God said, "The reason you're going through this is there are two nations within you that are struggling back and forth." And this kind of sets the stage for the relationship between these two brothers, Jacob and Esau. And they were two very, very different kinds of guys. Esau was red-haired, big, strong hunter, kind of what we say like as a man's man. And Jacob was kind of stay at home. Nowadays he'd be the one playing on the computer, playing games all day, sitting in the basement doing nothing. But when they came time for them to be born, Esau was born first. And as they were coming out, Jacob grabbed Esau's ankle and came out holding on to his ankle. So there was even that struggle as they were being born. So they were two very, very different guys, two very, very different men. But they were struggled. They struggled with one another the entire time. Now, Isaac, Dad, which kid do you think he liked more?
The man's man.
Yeah.
That's right. Isaac preferred Esau. He said, my son is a hunter, he's a gatherer, he's a provider, he's big, strong, hairy, awesome. I like Esau better. So you can see there Isaac showing Esau how to shoot a bow. Now, who do you think Mom liked better?
Girl.
The soft boy.
Jacob.
Jacob. The one who would stick around the house, help her cook, help her clean, do all of those kind of things. So, Isaac preferred Esau, Rachel preferred Jacob. Does this look like it's going to turn out well?
No.
No, and it doesn't. We'll get into that in a little bit. But one of the things that I want to piggyback on with what Keisha said earlier is that the Bible talks about real things in life, real situations where people do wrong things. Because the Bible is not just prescriptive. Now, prescriptive, you know what prescriptive means? It means you should do this. So the Bible says, love your neighbor. That's a prescription. What are you supposed to do?
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor. The Bible is also descriptive. It tells us about how life happens. Now, if something is being described, does that mean you should do it?
No.
So if you were going to be a parent, do you think it would be a good idea to play favorites with your kids?
Probably not.
No. So if anybody comes up to you and tells you, well, it's in the Bible that these parents played favorite with their kids, so I can play favorites with my kids, do they really understand the Bible?
No.
No. Make that distinction in your head.
Yeah. Or, it's okay to have a baby with my wife's servant.
Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit too, because this gets messy in a little
It
bit.
does.
My mom
Life
says
is
she has
messy.
favorites in like different categories. Like with hard work, it's one kid and then like playful and stuff. Like, it's not just one.
But it's not always the best of things. Not always the best of things. So, who gets to be king of the hill? That's one of the big questions that happened between Jacob and Esau. Now, they struggled in the womb. They struggled coming out of the womb. They struggled as they were kids. And that started making itself manifest a little later in life. But in order to understand what happened, we need a little bit of background. In ancient cultures, the firstborn son received the most inheritance. You know what an inheritance is, right? Mm-hmm. So when the parents die, they pass on all their money, they pass on all their land, they pass on, in this day and age, all their cattle, goats, sheep, stuff like that. So the oldest son would receive like 90 to 95% of the inheritance. And this was called the birthright. Yes?
What if the oldest was a girl, not a son?
Then that girl was out of luck.
Then it
Women
was-
were considered property.
Women were considered property.
What? So then it would go down to the.
It would go to the next
The oldest
youngest
son.
son.
But there's
The
no son.
birthright always went to the oldest son. Now you have a paper or worksheet in front of you. I hope you're taking notes on this, because as I teach you, you're going to be able to fill it out. Yes, Brooklyn?
But what happens, because you know how when you have babies, sometimes you can't have another baby after that. What if it's a girl and then you can't have another baby?
It would go to a nephew or to another a slave.
That's
Or
messed
they
up.
would
Or they,
That's messed
they would
up.
adopt a child.
well, like with what Abraham did with Hagar, they would oftentimes take a slave and they would have a child by the slave. And then that would be their heir. That would be the
Is that
one
when
who
he
would
went?
receive the birthright.
Whenever the slave was born in the house.
Yes, that's exactly what they meant. Exactly what they meant. So, because of this, the firstborn son was always held in highest esteem. They were always the one who was kind of get the special treatment and stuff like that. So, that's what the birthright is. Now you know where the inheritance is, and that sets the scene for what happens next. Because Jacob seized an opportunity. One day Esau had been out hunting. He was not successful. He did not find any game. He comes back. He's really, really, really hungry. Now, y'all are junior high kids. Most of you have played athletics. When you're done, have you ever felt like starving, like you wanted to eat, just shoe leather because you were so hungry? That's the way Esau was. He was very, very hungry. And he even thought he was going to die. That's how hungry he thought he was. And I know maybe you've had that feeling, I'm so hungry, feed me, I'm going to die if I don't get something to eat. That's the way Esau was feeling right now. So he sees Jacob cooking a stew. And he goes up to Jacob and he says, hey, give me something to eat. Give me some of that stew. I'm dying, man. Give me some food. And Jacob says, okay, I'll give you some food. But first, sell me your birthright. Say that I'm going to be the oldest kid. I will get the inheritance. And Esau said, what good's a birthright if you're not around to use it? I'm dying. You can have my birthright. Just give me the food. So, what does this say about Jacob here?
That he's disrespecting what God told him to do.
Not just respecting what God is doing, but what kind of person do you think he is? What is he kind of showing himself to be? A trickster.
Yeah.
Very much so. Jacob is very, very manipulative. And so we see this coming out in their relationship. Jacob takes advantage of his older brother, gets the birthright, is very, very manipulative. And that's just the beginning. That's just the beginning. Remember, God made promises to Abraham. Abraham was blessed with the covenant, right? What Miss Keisha just covered. I'm going to give you a land. I'm going to give you plenty of descendants. I'm going to make of you a great nation. All of these things God promised to Abraham. And then those promises were passed down to Isaac. And then, who do you think that promise should go to next?
The oldest son.
The oldest son, right. So who should get the promise?
The oldest son, not the youngest son.
Jacob or Esau? Esau. Esau should get the blessing. Because that's the way the culture worked. But remember, this is a family divided. Isaac loved Esau, Rebekah loved Jacob. Who do you think Rebekah wanted to have the blessing?
Jacob.
Yeah, Jacob. So, what does she do?
She tells him to do that.
Well, one day, Isaac told Esau, I want you to go hunting. I'm going to give you my blessing. I'm going to pass down the blessing that God has given to me. And I want you to go kill my favorite food, my favorite game, prepare my favorite meal out of it, and after I eat of it, I'm going to give you the blessing. So Esau took off and went hunting. Well, while Esau was gone, Rebekah got Jacob and said, hey, you need to come here. We need to get this blessing. I want this blessing to go to you. And Jacob was like, how am I going to do that? Rebecca said, don't worry, I'll make up your dad's favorite meal. I won't use, the venison or whatever Esau was going to hunt. I'll use a goat, but I'll make it up. And then you'll go in there. And because Isaac was blind at this time, that's an important detail. Isaac was blind. You tell him you're Esau. And Jacob says, well, what if he asks to feel my arms and stuff? Esau's really hairy, and I don't have any hair. I'm kind of soft. What do I do then? She says, don't worry, we'll cover you with sheepskin, sheep hair. And that way, if he feels it, he will think it's Esau. So Jacob does what his mom tells him. And being blind, Isaac is deceived. He hears Jacob come in, says, hey, who is this? Says, it's Esau, Dad. I brought you your meal that you asked. Jacob says, that was really quick. How did you get the game so fast? Esau says, the Lord provided. Or not Esau, but Jacob says, the Lord provided. And Isaac says, well, come here. You sound like Jacob. Let me feel your arms. Feels his arms, feels his back, feels the goat hair. Says, oh, you sound like Jacob, but you feel like Esau. This has got to be Esau. Isaac blesses Jacob. So, Esau comes back. How do you think Esau feels when he finds out his brother stole his blessing?
Really happy.
He goes into a rage. He is so mad, he is ready to kill his younger brother. And he says, I'm going to kill him. When I see him, I am going to absolutely kill him. So Rachel hears what Esau says, brings Jacob and says, Jacob, you got to get out of here. Your brother is so angry, he is going to kill you. Go stay with my uncle. His name is Laban. I'll tell you where to go. So Jacob runs away. Jacob heads out to go be with his uncle and spend time with him. And as he is going, he comes to a place called Bethel. Bethel in Hebrew means house of God. So when he goes to this place called Bethel, it's nighttime, he lays down, he uses a rock as a pillow, he falls asleep. And as he's sleeping, he has a dream. And he sees a ladder in his dream. It's kind of a stairway up into heaven. And there's angels that are going up and down this stairway. And he hears God's voice. God speaks to him as he's dreaming and seeing this vision. In that day and age, they believed that your dreams carried visions from God. And so Jacob believes he is hearing God. And he did. He really hears God speak. And God tells Jacob, look, that covenant that I made with your great-grandfather Abraham has now been passed to you. So out of you I will continue that promise and make out of you a great nation. Here in Bethel is where you will live. This is going to be your home. And this is where you will raise your family. And so Jacob, when he wakes up, sets up a pillar. It's like an altar. And he swears at that moment that he will serve God. So again, this is kind of that covenant, that binding agreement, which is really important with that big R word, which is
Relationship.
Y'all are good. Y'all remembered. Excellent job. Excellent job. So, the covenant is passed on. Jacob swears he will follow the covenant. He will agree with it. So, the next step in the process, he gets to where his uncle lives. I'm not going to go through all of that story. We don't have all of the time. You can read it for yourself if you want to. It's kind of some interesting stuff. But it turns out Laban is just as manipulative as Jacob is. He's not really a great uncle. And I know this is kind of marrying your relatives and stuff like that, but that's what they did in that day. I mean, it's a lot different than we do now. And Jacob wanted to marry Laban's younger daughter, Rachel. He found her to be very beautiful, very attractive. And Laban said, okay, yeah, you can marry her, but you have to work 7 years for me. And so Jacob works 7 years for Laban. They have a wedding. The bride is covered with a veil. After the wedding, they go into the tent to consummate the marriage. The bride makes sure that the lights are turned off and it's very dark. And after they consummate the marriage, they lie with one another. The lights go on. Jacob looks and says, "That's not Rachel. That's your oldest daughter, Leah." And Jacob is furious. He's like, he went to his uncle. He said, "You tricked me. I was supposed to marry Rachel. You made me lie with your oldest daughter. You made me marry her." And Laban said, "Well, it's tradition that the oldest daughter has to marry first." Not a very nice guy, is it?
No.
Now, this is not exactly how you would handle marriage these days, is it? Like I said, the Bible is descriptive at times, not prescriptive. This is telling us something about human nature. This is telling us how flawed people are. It tells us how flawed you and I are. And it also shows how God will even use these flawed situations to bring about His work and His kingdom. So, after Jacob blows up at Laban, Laban says, "Okay, work for me another 7 years, and I'll let you marry Rachel." Jacob says, "Okay, I'll work for another 7 years." And immediately at that time, he let Jacob marry Rachel, so they became husband and wife.
But
Now-
back then, when you were married, and he didn't hit it and quit it, he was married to both of them eventually.
Yes, he was married to both of them. They both became his wife. These are called polygamy.
Yes,
Yeah.
Emma.
I thought you can't marry somebody that you're related to.
In our time and age, yes.
So, yeah.
But
Back
back
then, it was way more common
So the
than it is.
answer to the one that says when Jacob worked for his uncle Laban, which daughter did Laban make marry?
Married
It'd be
first.
Leah.
Yeah.
That would be Leah.
Leah.
Yes, that would be
Leah.
Leah. Leah was the first one.
So it was
So,
like no divorce. It was
no, it was not divorce. I mean, they could marry, and they could have several wives back in that day. And again, every time in the Bible that you see somebody marry multiple wives, it never turns out good. That's why I said the Bible is descriptive, not prescriptive. Gentlemen, don't think you can read the Bible and think, "Oh, I can go marry a whole bunch of women." No! That is not God's intention. God's intention, one man, one woman in marriage, that's it. Because every time you see multiple wives, it goes wrong really bad.
Is that or a Netflix TV show?
This is true. That's a
Very
Netflix
true,
TV
very
show.
true.
So let's take a look now at Jacob's family. We're going to break this down really quick, as quick as I possibly can. And you're going to see how the things play out. Because Jacob married Leah first, right? Then he married Rachel. Well, he started having kids. But Rachel was barren at first. Leah started having children. First she had Reuben, then she had Simeon, then she had Levi, and then she had Judah. Rachel became very jealous that her sister was having all of these babies and that she was not having kids. And so she told Jacob, "I want you to take my handmaiden, my female slave, and I want you to have sex with her and have children by her, and I will catch them when she gives birth." So they thought, if my handmaid gives birth and I catch the baby, then that's my baby. So I want you to take my servant Bilhah, and I want you to have sex with her, and I want you to have children with her. I'll catch them. Those will be my kids. So she had two boys, Dan and Naphtali, by her handmaiden Bilhah.
Wait, so would that be a wife?
That would not be a wife.
Okay.
That would be a...
so he had 6 children then, right?
Oh, we're not done.
Oh, Lord. Are we done with the wives yet?
We're not done yet.
Okay.
Well, how many wives did I just say he had?
2.
2. So he had 2 wives. But Leah now saw that Rachel gave her handmaiden to have children. And so she said, "Oh, I can do the same thing." So she told Jacob, "Go to my handmaiden Zilpah, and you have babies with her." So she had 2 babies, Gad and Asher. So, I mean, you think that the Bible is this kid's book. It's not, man. If it was a movie, it'd be like NC-17.
Yeah. Or you're like, let's not talk about that at church.
Yeah, this is stuff we don't necessarily talk about. And I think we should sometimes more, because again, this is how things operated. It was messy. But we're not done yet.
Oh my gosh.
Because Leah had a couple of more children. She had Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. I don't know exactly how you would say that. But she said she had 3 more children.
Why is Dina or Dinah pink?
Because it was a girl. It was a daughter.
Oh.
It was a daughter. So this is one of the only daughters that is named, and I'm going to give her her due. All right.
That's 11 kids.
That's 11 kids.
That's a lot of money.
And again, unfortunately, in that day and age, the sons were considered more important. Dina makes an appearance because there's a story about her that's a really nasty story later. We're not going to cover it because I don't have time.
Wait, did Rachel have any babies?
Yes, that's next.
Oh God.
That's next. After these, and again, in that day and age, the daughters were not considered as much important. In fact, the Bible gives Dina her due, but there's a really nasty story about her rape, and then brothers going and killing the person who kind of raped her, and it's really bad. But it's kind of what happened in those days and age. But I want to give her her due. But the attention is going to be on the sons, because out of these sons we will have a nation of Israel, and there will be 12 tribes out of these 12 sons. I know there's only 10 sons up right there, 2 more for Rachel. Rachel had Joseph next. Her womb was opened, as the Bible reports, and she had Joseph. Now, in just a second, we will hear, remember, Jacob was the favored son. Rachel was the favored wife, right? He wanted to marry her first. So guess who the favored son became? Joseph. And it causes all kinds of problems.
Wait.
Yes, Kirsten.
Oh, no.
Okay, just stretching.
Is
All
that
right,
kids?
one more child. And this I'm going to cover
15 kids.
because later on there's a lot that takes place between the last child being born. But Rachel has a final son, Benjamin, and when she has Benjamin, she dies. She dies during childbirth. And it's sad. It really is. But that happened in those days too. I mean, if we didn't have hospitals, the clean sanitation and stuff like that, when babies were born, there was a high likelihood of the baby dying or the mom dying. And unfortunately, that happened to Rachel when she had Benjamin. So guess who Jacob's second favorite son was?
Benjamin.
So 13 children, 12 sons.
Wait, so we put,
I feel sorry for
so we
Leah.
put 2 wives.
I do too.
2 wives, 13 kids.
Like, how must it feel to have a husband who doesn't really love you? Right? And you keep having these sons hoping that he will.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of intrigue with Leah having those next 3 sons and stuff like that, because she manipulates Rachel so that Jacob would spend the night with her. I mean, I think it's wicked.
I finished 7.
I had 1.
All right, we're going to keep going now. Eventually, Jacob turns the tables on his uncle, and he breeds his uncle's goats so that he ends up with the majority of them. They had this deal where Jacob would work another like 6 or 7 years, and Jacob would take all the spotted and striped sheep and goats, and his uncle would take all the ones that were solid white, solid black, and Jacob manipulated the breeding process so that his herds grew and he became very wealthy. When his uncle saw this, his uncle was not too pleased with that, so Jacob decided to get away from there as quickly as possible. They ended up reconciling eventually, but Jacob tried to get out of there. He started heading back home. And on the way, as he was heading home, he heard that Esau, he had sent some people ahead to greet Esau because he was hoping his brother wasn't mad at him and was going to kill him. Well, the folks returned after meeting Esau and said, Esau's coming with 400 men. What do you think Jacob did?
Ran away.
Freaked out. Well, he couldn't really run because he had all his herds, he had his wife and his kids, so he sent them across the stream for some measure of protection, maybe give them a head start and run. And he said, I'll wait on this side for Esau to come. But while he was waiting, he was spending the night praying. He was up, nervous, erect, talking to God, and an angel appeared. And the angel began wrestling with Jacob. And as they wrestled all night long, and towards morning, Jacob grabbed the angel and wouldn't let him get away. And the angel said, let me go, I've got to get away before the sun gets too bright. I'll wrestle you at night, during the day, I got to disappear. But Jacob said, no, I will not let you go. The angel struck him in the hip.
With what?
With his finger, kind of messed up his hip ligaments, bones. He never walked straight again. Which is kind of an interesting story in itself. I don't have a lot of time to go into it.
Sorry.
But messed with his hip, still hung on. Jacob still held on to that angel with all of his might. I will not let you go until you bless me. The angel blessed him. And he said, no longer will you be called Jacob, but you will be called Israel. And Israel means one who wrestles with God. And so when you hear us now, from now on, talk about the people of Israel, it goes back to this event, the people who wrestle with God.
For the 12 tribes of Israel are the 12 sons of Jacob.
Of Jacob. All right. And
God.
And the good news about this is the next morning, Esau shows up. They meet. They are reconciled to one another. The hatred and animosity that they once shared for one another is now gone. Jacob moves to Bethel, where he saw the ladder, and he lived there with his family. And we're going to see how some of those mistakes were remade with Joseph.